Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Bass Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.
Well, that was random.
Exceptional Radio.
Hey, good afternoon. It is the 19th of June, and it is fantastic outside. Like, it's not punishing to be outside. You can go outside for more than 10 minutes without just shedding weight in the form of, of sweat. And then there's a reduced risk of heat stroke and heat exhaustion. Oh, this is like a big bonus. I have windows open. There's a breeze. It's like the nicest day. I thought yesterday was nice, but today is actually a little bit nicer. Like being able to sleep without that giant high pressure region floating over us in the atmosphere, holding everything down, just making it just, like, I can only describe that weather as oppressive.
Yeah, it's definitely accurate. Feels like walking through Jello.
Oh man, like just standing still in the shade, trying to catch a breeze, shouldn't feel like exercise, but in that kind of weather, it really is.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to be like, peak summer heat in August, but in the beginning of summer, wait, is it even officially summer yet?
Few days, right?
Yeah. Like when the tail end of spring is like peaks, what we associate with peak summer. Oh man, that doesn't bode well.
Solstice, yeah. 21st coming up.
Oh, that doesn't bode well at all.
I guess it kind of. I think the specific date is the 21st, but it's like
cosmologically, it's probably like sometime between the 21st and 22nd, right?
Yeah, like I think even between like the 19th and the 23rd,
Oh.
so they average out to the 21st.
Okay. It's gonna be good. I have a positive outlook for summer. We just got rid of
Tuesday, this June 21st.
Yeah, like the Earth had a cold and it had its fever broke, and then now it's chilling again, and everything is better, except for wherever the heat wave has moved on to.
Well, and I guess if that's the peak and it's kind of mild right now, then maybe we're in for like not mild, but a kind of back and forth where it goes between like sweltering hot and mild.
Yeah.
Because I think what ends up happening is instead of rain, it just ends up becoming oppressive humidity, and it's like then those days go like, it goes 95 to 100, and then it'll go down to 75, but it won't rain, whereas before it might have been like 85 to 90, and then it would rain and just stay 80 to 85. So it's like it is actually a more extreme swing of temperature, but the result is like less frequent rain and more cool humidity between the oppressive heat.
Yeah.
Is what I've seen as far as how the cycles seem to have evolved. Because the weather has definitely changed. I feel like the people who are the anti-climate change people just don't pay attention to anything. Whereas if you just even bother to read a farmer's almanac or fucking just look up in the sky a couple times a day, you'll start to see over your lifetime, like the weather has definitely changed and the patterns have changed.
So this is something that I just learned about recently I knew they existed, I just didn't know what they were called. They're noctilucent cloud. They are clouds that form in the mesosphere. So what is that? That's like 250,000 to 280,000 feet is where these clouds form. And they're only visible at the last minutes of sunlight. Actually, once a person is in the in the shadow zone, they're no longer in the sunlight. That's when these clouds start to emerge at like the end of the night, and and some of the times they're even visible into night because they're that high up in the sky. And apparently, the occurrence of these clouds has been increasing rather dramatically over the past, couple decades, and it's because we're pumping more stuff up into the upper atmosphere like every year. And I'm not sure, but I feel like that's the kind of thing that should be like a no-brainer. It's like, hey man, this stuff wasn't here when we were kids.
Yeah.
I mean, they existed. Well, they were first discovered around like in the 1880s, but not even. But still, they didn't exist like they do now.
Well, even on that, since COVID hit, there's way fewer fucking contrail in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's just not as many plane flights happening. Also, where are the flat earthers? Did COVID kill all the flat earthers off? Because I haven't heard flat earth people in a while. Did we get lucky and have COVID kill off all the flat earthers?
I mean, if it's going to take out a conspiratorial group. We can start that
conspiracy and make it a conspiracy and like make it so that COVID was aimed at conspiracy theory people and it started to kill them off.
Well, of course it was designed to target conspiratorial thinkers.
I feel like that's actually the only way to get them to get vaccinated is like counter conspiracy.
You come up with a counter conspiracy that's more outlandish than what they believe in, so they'll have to respond to it.
Conspiracyception.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they can't get the mind control juices through the planes, they got to find another way to do it. Obviously, they're going to do it through electric cars. Can you even buy a Tesla if you're not vaccinated?
Well, I don't know, but Neuralink is failing miserably. And then there was a letter at SpaceX written where people are the workers, not just like random people. These are the workers from SpaceX. At least 100 of them were not happy with Elon's Twitter behavior, so they wrote a letter and signed it, and then he threatened to fire all the people who wrote the letter, and in the process may have broken labor laws by threatening to fire them for speaking out about his behavior. So this is interesting to see this like weekly unraveling of the emperor's invisible clothing.
Isn't Lord Musk getting sued for like billions of dollars or something?
There's
like
multiple
that?
lawsuits.
I know, but the Dogecoin Ponzi scheme lawsuit, the Dogecoin Ponzi scheme lawsuit's huge.
And it's like, I'm not sure that there's any actual grounds for that person bringing that much. Like they'd have to prove that there was $258 billion worth of damages to even make it into a court, because that's where I'm like, just because someone's filing a lawsuit doesn't mean a court's actually going to recognize it. But the issue is, if enough people get on board with it, it's very possible. But it's like, even if there's nothing there, he has to spend money on his legal defense to defuse it. So it's like, as the lawsuits start to mount up, even the frivolous ones are going to make it more difficult for him to prove that he's not grifting or not eventually he won't have enough money to pay all of the lawyers for the lawsuits, is what I'm getting at. And it's like quickly starting to get to that point in a way that I didn't think it would be this fast. But it's like I hope there's a bunch of frivolous lawsuits, because like even as much I don't like, I feel like the $258 billion lawsuit is like, it's not completely frivolous, but the amount is way over inflated for that individual's damages. But it's not to say that, like, here's the issue is Coinbase is getting sued for the Luna, and there's some other token disaster. A bunch of people invested in these tokens and lost tens and millions. I think
Binance is also getting sued over it.
Yeah, Binance is also getting sued. So like, as these lawsuits start to mount, this whole capacity, it also depends on the fines. If they do start to get like $1 billion fines, or $1 billion damage assessments, like this whole landscape is going to shift dramatically. But if they don't, then it's going to get worse in a way that, like, Elon's already doubling down on trying to get Twitter to integrate crypto payments to probably pump the market in its depressed state. Because I think Tesla's down like $1.5 billion on its Bitcoin investments. So they're, or crypto altogether, because they're like way down, and it's finally starting to get reported on in a way that they're down too much for the news, quote unquote, organizations that reported on it in the first place to keep ignoring it for this long. But even to the point where now that the SpaceX employees are like speaking out against his behavior, because part of it is like, yeah, he's pumping and dumping crypto tokens on Twitter in a way that it's so obvious to anyone that just reads a few of his tweets that I know the SEC is like really slow to react, but I feel like they must be getting like a huge case against him if they're just like letting him keep going, because that's kind of where he's done too much at this point for them not to start to bring a case, which is where I'm like, oh, they must be just sitting back watching him dig his legal hole for himself.
This is definitely an example of, oh yeah, let's give him some more rope.
Yep.
Let's just keep giving them rope. They need more rope, apparently.
Yeah. That's exactly how it feels.
He's like he's taking in like extended loans on rope and shovels. And it's not going to work out.
Even down, okay, because here's another thing. Like, whenever Joe Biden would talk about electric vehicles, he would explicitly leave Tesla out, to the point where Elon started to get mad about it. And knowing that the government had subsidized Tesla to the tune of like $1 billion, you know, it's not all of their funds by any means, but they gave them money. So for the government to have given Tesla money and then to like act like they didn't exist, there's some shit going on behind the scenes.
$7 billion.
Oh, seven. Oh, my bad.
Between Tesla and SpaceX, they've received more than $7 billion.
Okay. Well, this is so funny that he's running an electric car company and a internal combustion fuel rocket company. Anyway, that the government gave him all this money and then tried to act like he didn't exist. Like, they would, if he was doing as well as he's trying to say, they would be patting themselves on the back for a big win. Meanwhile, they're like touting Ford and Ford relocating their production back to America after outsourcing like 75% of it abroad, and then in the process shifting to electric investment while Tesla's laying off people, Ford's hiring, and the government is like making jabs at them by alluding to these things. It's like
I know that Mexico is a different country and there is an international border, but is producing a truck in Mexico really producing it abroad?
Yes, it is. And further, the big reason that the distinction happens is because when Ford started shipping their production abroad, a lot of the factories went to Mexico, even though it's like a lot of the part production went to China, but the actual construction, the vehicle construction went to Mexico. So there's qualitatively no difference for the American economy to have production shipped to China or Mexico. So that's where it is like there's no difference, because now the taxes are going mostly to a different country. The income for the vehicles is going to mostly to a different country. So then when they bring those vehicles back in, Ford has to pay tariffs on them, which, yeah, that goes to the government, but a lot of the production tax, like, back end is being lost in Mexico. So it's like, again, there's, whether it's Mexico or fucking Antarctica, I mean, I guess Antarctica is like international, so they could still count it as like, regardless, if it's Mexico or fucking Kuala Lumpur is no difference. Concerning, this is why it gets weird, because when we're talking about GDP or like government investment into private sector output, that doesn't actually necessarily mean the best outcome for the citizens. But in this case, it was just a terrible outcome for everybody. Like, the only people who really benefited from the outsourcing was Ford executives and oil companies. Like, the people in Mexico who got the jobs were exploited. The Ford employees in America lost their jobs, so they got fucked because they had unionized years ago, but in shipping those jobs out of the country, then the union protections were then like out the fucking door too. So like those union, like UAW protections don't apply in Mexico or China. So then the factory conditions are now pre-union. Not to say they haven't made tons of strides in both countries, but the whole point of shipping them outside was to get around union standards and union practices that, you know, not all of them are perfect, and not to say that unions were perfect, but there's a lot of shit that specifically Ford and the UAW had done to make their factories safer and of much higher standard than like you find in Mexico or China specifically, because the government hadn't, well, it wasn't just the government. In this case, it's like the unions on behalf of the workers bringing the standards up and then coordinating to get the standards legalized across the board, so that if they figured out like, oh, you can't have somebody working longer than 12 hours on the floor during a shift without at least a 1 hour or 2 hour break or whatever the standards they came up with, then those are the things that like isn't United Auto Workers is not just associated with Ford, but Ford and United Auto Workers, I mean, and Chevrolet as well, but they've made many strides to then do things like where factory recalls are fairly standardized now. There didn't used to be a huge standard for doing factory recalls on a vehicle, but over time it was like they fucked up so many cars. I mean, it was like the Gremlin, the Pinto. There was a few cars that had catastrophic failures where they would just burst into flames, which is why internal combustion gas powered vehicles now don't really do that in a way that the electric vehicles, Tesla specifically, do, because they haven't gone through that decades of iteration.
They catch on fire 3 weeks after the accident.
Yeah. There's all kinds of shit because they're so young in their commercial industrial production phase. Not to say that electric vehicles are new or young. It's that making them at scale is so new that they don't know the long-term implications of what is like extremely combustible under what conditions. And it's like, it's going to take a bunch of random fires before they figure those things out, unfortunately.
Well, I think it puts the magnifying glass on the whole skateboard platform as a whole, because Tesla has probably more road time with their vehicles, with their electric fleet, than any other manufacturer at this point. Maybe, well, in America, I'm sure that in China they've got 20 times the number of electric vehicles. But that's not the point. The point is, they've been touting the skateboard platforms, and every manufacturer is developing a skateboard platform to house the battery and then to mount the motors and then suspension and all that good stuff. And then they essentially set the passenger compartment on top. And this is funny because it's like going back to body on frame vehicles, giant land yachts, but we don't really know how survivable these things really are, because every example of a Tesla that gets into a serious accident bursts into fucking flames, either instantly or up to 3 weeks later now. And these things can't be doused with water. They've got to cool them off with something. The one that burst into flames 3 weeks later, they dug a pit, filled it with water to cool the chemicals down so they wouldn't continue burning, because the whole point is to prevent the aluminum from igniting, because that's like impossible to put out. But if all of these things are susceptible to, collision, battery compartment rupture, fire, combustion, that's really fucking scary. Like, you get into a fender bender and everything seems fine. You're driving home and all of a sudden the center of your vehicle bursts into a several thousand degree flame. Holy shit.
I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I know, like, oh, this is the answer to the problem.
Oh no, it's just like these are just my concerns. This is actually
very, for sure. It's more so though, like, I know that there are certain things that come with certain types of engineering setups, in that, like, for example, if you're using something that's high wattage output or using a lot of power, it's going to get really hot.
Yeah.
That's just
part of it.
It's like, it's not to say it's unavoidable.
Well,
but if you have,
that's thermodynamics. It's either expended as energy or it turns into rendered as heat. And so these are going to happen until researchers figure out how to do the whole sulfur vapor deposition onto carbon substrate thing, so they can make the lithium sulfur batteries viable.
I mean, that's one possibility. Or maybe it's meant to be like, maybe we should be doing like 60 smaller engines or 60 smaller electric motors instead of one big fucking motor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's like where it's ants. Like, maybe that's the answer, instead of like, or for now, because obviously what you're saying, that solves the problem completely. But the issue is, I'm not sure that because then you look at the Chinese electric vehicles and they are making them smaller, and they are making them so that, like, the way they're set up, the engines or the batteries and the motors probably don't get as hot as if you're trying to just reproduce 2,000-pound vehicle size motor setup, as if that thermodynamic buildup isn't going to be proportional, like with this specific technology. And then SUVs and shit like that. Like, I'm sure the Cybertrucks blow up even worse than the fucking Teslas, because the Cybertrucks have to be fucking super heavy then.
And they've got to run. If it's a truck, it's going to be used like a truck.
Meant to be. I doubt that they're ever able to actually get the Cybertruck functioning the way a truck is meant to function, and it's only going to be in the like Hummer, I'm using this as a demonstration that I'm rich type of truck functionality.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if people from like the heartland, from farm country, who use their trucks like tools, are going to adopt electric trucks, especially. I think one of the things that keeps China last year reported 85 vehicles caught on fire. 86 vehicles that caught on fire in the last 2 years. That's like one a week almost. One of the big differences that I've noticed with the Chinese electric vehicle market is their vehicles have very limited range, like 40 to 60 miles. 60 is on the long end. And so they're not putting giant batteries in their vehicles, because the people that are getting those are just using them in town where they have chargers everywhere.
Right. They're not trying to drive them between cities. They're just driving them to the store.
They're still using gasoline and diesel for their trucks and heavy transportation. So this is like a solution to a transit issue for individuals in China, where they keep it small. But if they go somewhere, they've got like an extensive rail network and an airline network that they can access through their social credit system, which I'm still not entirely sure how it works, but so they've got a different use case. So that's probably why they have fewer vehicle fires, and because the batteries are smaller and they don't have to go as far.
From what I can tell, it seems their social credit system is like our credit system plus Facebook. And then, like, if people want to report it, they have to go through official channels. But it seems like that's it, because we've had a stupid fucking credit system too, which is where like the idea that like somehow China's social credit system is somehow more dystopian than our current credit system is like some weird fucking propaganda that I'm like,
oh, I don't think it's more dystopian than ours. I just don't fully understand.
No, I don't think you framed it like that.
No, I really just don't understand how it like
frames it. It's like,
oh yeah,
so it's been put out as if like this like scary fucking communist measurement of your social status. Like, yeah, we already have a credit system here. That's exactly like, you can't fucking get a loan if you have bad credit. You can't get a fucking mortgage. Like, we have the same fucking shit. And then
is it still possible to get a seat on an airline without a credit card? Can you buy an airline ticket with just cash? Is that even possible? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So yeah, you can't travel on an airplane in America.
No, exactly. Dude, you can't buy a car with cash. Like, you're not gonna be able to go into a fucking
good luck getting.
You can't buy a new vehicle with cash.
Good luck getting insurance with cash.
Shitty old vehicle, right? Yeah, exactly.
Where are you gonna get insurance with cash?
All of these things that you need a bank to do. Like, I can't go pay rent with cash. I literally cannot go in there and pay my rent with cash. They won't accept it because they want to make sure that they don't have cash sitting around in the office so they can get robbed. Like, they used to accept cash, but they don't anymore. So like right there, I need at least either to go buy a money order or have a bank account. And then the money order it costs me money. So if I don't have a bank account because my credit's not good enough or I've been blackballed for whatever reason, then I'm like shut out of certain types of housing. So it's like you have to have your credit checked before a lot of places will rent to you. Like I remember when I first came to Bloomington my freshman year, I lived off campus, but they were doing credit checks then, and I'm like, I didn't have any credit, so it would like limit me to what type of place I could stay in, and it's like,
Yeah.
you know, that that type of social ceiling exists in America, but our media will make it seem like the Chinese version is somehow like evil, even though we do the exact same shit. It's really weird.
You know, I'm going to be completely honest. I have an excellent credit rating, and I'm still not entirely clear on how our credit system works. And I have read about it.
It's fucking made up and racist. That shit didn't start till like 1989, and people think that it's like it's founded on some sort of. It's literally invented to keep like black people from getting mortgages and getting loans when it's not. It's there's like no real rhyme or reason to it, because then you find out like certain contracts, if you pay off your shit early, it makes your credit rating go down.
Yeah.
Or then like if you certain people, if you check your credit rating, just checking your credit rating makes it go down by like 15 points. So if you have a bad credit rating and you're trying to figure out like, how do I make it better? Every time you fucking check it and do like what's my credit rating now, and do like an official check, it shit goes down. It really like if you've had a credit rating like above 800 for a while, you have no idea what that system actually does to people who can't get above 800 no matter what they do.
Yeah.
Like there's literally nothing I could do to get above 800 because I've been in a position where I've like paid off basically everything but my student loans, and I didn't even have many at the time, so it was like maybe $3,000, and like I couldn't get a car loan except from like JD Byrider. I couldn't get a mortgage. Like my credit rating was like, I think the highest it's ever been is like 730, and that was like at the time it should have been like 830 or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when the highest I could ever get it was like not good enough to get the things that it should have been. Like if I was making $30,000 a year, my credit card limit shouldn't be $500, but it was. Even though, so there's all these things about like, I've never had a credit card limit for that was in my name for more. I think the highest one, because this is the issue, the highest one was like a care credit card for $4,000, which was only be able to be used in medical situations. So then like the only actual credit card, the highest I've ever had it was I think 500. And think about that for a second. If your credit limit makes it so that you can only take out $500 worth of credit, that's like less than a monthly bill. So you don't actually get much of a safety net. So then when you use it all up, your earning potential is like still low. So you can't pay it back. So then you have people getting stuck with like their credit going into the shitter because of like $500 credit card. Like a $500 credit card at the wrong time can get carried over somebody's head for a decade because the interest builds up, and they might be like, the whole reason they had it was for emergency. Then they get unemployed for 10 months. It's like a cascade of shit where credit is actually only meant to keep black people. It's like meant to keep us poor and put in a position where if white people need money, they can just go fucking get it because their credit, it like just doesn't take hits the same way as black people's does. And like Indian people and Chinese people and Japanese people and Korean people adjacent to black people all get the benefits of white credit and don't understand why black people have a problem because they don't get the same like treatment. They get a preferential treatment as if they're white because there's like an exoticism towards certain types of non-white people, and then there's an oppressive system of like in systematic theft that's built in a way where you're like, how is the tax system racist? How is the credit system racist? Well, if you look at the way that these things have disproportionately affected black people over time, they've just basically siphoned money and wealth from black communities in a way that's not happening to white communities. So it's like, it's not even my construction. It's just go fucking look at the data. And then you find out that the reasons that all of the specific like property taxes are written the way they are in certain areas, and then the standards for hiring, and then what companies cover concerning like benefits and all these things. It's like, this is how you end up with black people not having healthcare benefits, black people in positions of like menial level and never actually breaking through into managerial or executive positions. But in the process, because the same things aren't happening to other people of color, like they weren't before, but now it's starting to happen. So it's like people were willing to overlook it as if because it was happening to black people, but not like other Asian people or other immigrants, like definitely wouldn't happen to white immigrants, then people were willing to just let it keep happening to black people. But now it's happening to fucking everybody. It's happening to white people. It's happening to Chinese people. It's happening to fucking Japanese. It doesn't matter where you're immigrant from. Like the free-flowing capital from military industrial imperialism is no longer there for X, Y, and Z reason, whether it's COVID or the military not being able to convince young kids that giving up their person and dying for this stupid fucking flag is worth it anymore. There's a bunch of reasons why they can't keep it going. But the biggest one is that all these American companies lied about their products and they're not actually producing what they said they're producing. That right there, which we've been calling the big nothing for a long time. So this is why, to me, I think it's hilarious watching it all fall apart. But America is like so unwilling to accept.
Recruitment has dropped 25% since 2016.
Oh, I didn't even have to look at I knew it, you know.
Holy
and this
crap.
is what I mean. This is why America is like shooting itself and murdering itself and lashing out at itself, because it's a dying animal that doesn't know how to exist without systematic violence. And because it can't enact that systematic violence on other countries to steal their capital, it's doing it on itself. And that's where all this shit, it's like, that can only last for so long though. So it's like, I'm not a pessimist, more so like I'm a realist in that, because I think we talked about it. It's like when you can't, when there's no longer a way to export your imperialism, you're going to start being imperialist towards yourself. And that's exactly what's fucking happened, in a way that now I think, like, the fact that the government had to step in and arrest all those fucking racist redneck idiots that were trying to like start a riot at the Pride Parade. They can't let it go anymore because they're starting to threaten the Dan Crenshaws. They're starting to threaten the Republicans. Like they've created this monster that they thought that they could just put a little fucking chain on its neck. And it's like, oh, we'll bring out the monster when we want to threaten our enemies, and you know, if we want to threaten our little political fucking football opponent, we'll bring out this racist monster and then we'll put it back in its little racist cage. But that shit is off the chain, and they're even scared of it now, because I don't know if you saw Dan Crenshaw got confronted. Somebody was like saying they're gonna kill him and shit.
Oh,
it was like a Republican. It was like clearly like a white fucking supremacist Republican. Is not like a left. It was not a left-wing person at all. But they're like threatening to kill one of the most right-wing fucking pieces of shit out there in Dan Crenshaw. Yeah, that's what they were like.
They call him a rhino, a Republican in name only.
Yeah, so their shit is eating
Holy
their, like,
shit, they said they... Wow.
Yeah, man, it's getting serious. It's getting serious. This is what I'm saying. Like, all people have to do is get out of the way and let them eat themselves, because they will. Like, they've been fantasizing about killing each other. That's what the whole zombie shit is about. They want to kill each other. Just get out of the fucking way and let them do it, because they will.
They yelled, "You sold us out. You're a traitor."
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, this shit is getting serious in a way where the Tea Party was the precursor, where if like, here's the thing, the left wing is really terrible about organizing. So if they want to organize, they should just organize out of the fucking way and don't try to antagonize right-wing people, and just let them antagonize each other, because that's what's happening right now. Don't start, oh, Biden's fucking saving. Shut up. Don't talk. Don't, just get out of the fucking way.
Yeah.
Please understand that this is the best way to let them destroy themselves, because that's like, the more the left wing tries to draw attention to itself, it's going to distract from the right wing destroying itself, because it's so close to destroying itself right now.
So,
fracturing in a way that would be irreparable. It was really close with the Tea Party.
The one time that I experienced a brawl, I was at a party in Kokomo. It was in a barn. There was a band playing, and then some guys got into a fight, and then the whole place broke out into a fight. I may have recounted this story before, but I wasn't a part of that shit. I had no idea what was going on. It was like locals butting heads. And I mean, I got out of there real quick. We all got out. Everyone that I was with, we got out of there. But in no way would I have been equipped to do anything other than like try and not get hurt, because people were just ready to go at it. It was like, I didn't even realize how much tension was in the air until it happened. Now I can recognize that kind of tension in the air, but at the time, I'd never seen anything like it. I think you're right. I think when there's that much internal turmoil, sometimes that group doesn't need an outside perspective. They need to sort it out a little bit.
Well, it's funny you bring up that tension. I've been watching a lot of Twin Peaks, and in that show, it's like electricity. And it'll make that sound like the sound of electricity moving through power lines before the tension happens. And like, it's very explicit that the tension is this electricity that leads to this black fire. And it's like the culmination of all the negative feelings into negative actions. And it can be like seemingly random, but if you just pay attention, you can tell like the fucking air changes, and the electricity's like, it moves in and moves in waves. Because I was at the 500 qualifying one of the days, and like, it was like not exactly sundown, but it was probably an hour before sundown, and I'm like, man, it feels like that electricity's moving in, so I'm gonna get the fuck out. And then I like started to peace out, and we were leaving, and no sooner did I start leaving, there's like a fight 100, maybe 200 feet away, and I like look over, and the fight's happening, and then 200 feet in the other direction, there's like cops sitting there not doing anything, but then you realize the cops are like sitting in front of a place that's selling Delta 8. So it looks like they're trying to like mount a fucking, either they're harassing the Delta 8 customers, or it looks like they're about to go try to take it down. And it's like all this weird shit looks like it's about to start happening. And it's like, man, that tension just moved in, and I'm sure it only got worse from that point out. And I wasn't there to find out, but yeah, it's like, and I'm not saying it's uniquely American by any means, because it definitely happens in other places, but in America specifically, it's like a bunch of weird shit may happen within a 1 mile radius, and people not aware that it's happening to a bunch of other people at the same time. And it's just like this wave of collision and chaos comes and happens. And like in the same way that lunch rushes happen or coffee rushes happen, because I would always see, when I worked at Starbucks, it wasn't the same time every day, but it's like 100 people roll in all at once. Like, somebody send up a fucking flare? Who just, because then you realize the way that they would have had to like all stop what they're doing to end up there at the same time from all these different locations, because they clearly weren't coming from the same place. But it's like when these rushes happen, it's like, did Starbucks just fucking have a signal, or was it really a commercial that played on the radio, and really everybody was like, oh, I want to go get a Frappuccino right now? Is that really how it happened? Or is this some weird like conditioning that happens at a subconscious level, that we're like, oh, the wind shifted to this direction, I need to go get a Starbucks, and they don't know that they're all conditioned the exact same way. It's like real, because then you see the fucking, I don't know how often you ever drive by Chick-fil-A.
Dude, I'm always just, it blows my mind every time I drive by Chick-fil-A. There's a line through their parking lot just for their drive-through. Like, how do they even get into the parking lot with the line that wraps around the whole place just to go to the drive-through? I don't get it. That doesn't make any damn sense.
It doesn't make any sense. Like, yeah. And that's what I'm like. Is Chick-fil-A just like advertising on Christian radio or some shit, and they're all listening and at the same time? Because how did all those people end up at the fucking same place at the same time?
Well, maybe, maybe they're Methodists, and they're really, really devout to the practice of the method. And the method involves leaving for Chick-fil-A at a specific time every day, and it's a distance thing. So the person who's only a mile away that leaves at, like, let's say they all leave at 4:30 every day. The person who leaves at 4:30 who's only a mile away is going to get there faster than the person who leaves at 4:30 who's a mile and a half away. And so it's like they all know to go there. It's just they can only drive so fast because the roads are packed. It's 4:30. We're approaching rush hour. Even if they get there early, they're still going to have to deal with rush hour on the way back. And there's more Chick-fil-A rush hour because we're 4:30's time. I still don't get it, though. It's not even like their chicken sandwiches are that good.
No, and then I'm wondering, is like, are these people just only going to Chick-fil-A, and that's why they end up there like every day, because they go to Chick-fil-A during the week or some shit, and then it's like, oh, I don't cook during the week because I have to work, and so I just go to Chick-fil-A after work.
Man, Chick-fil-A was available in the high school and middle school lunchrooms when I was in high school and middle school. I, I got tired of them after a while. After 4 years of chicken sandwiches, the same chicken sandwich. Okay, here's the thing. Anybody can take a chicken breast and pound on it with a hammer, a meat tenderizer, and then brine it. And then once it's done brining, you go through and you batter it, and then you deep fry the fucking thing. It's not hard. It's actually really easy. And they always turn out juicy like that because it's of the brining process. It's not a special sandwich. I mean, McDonald's made one and it flopped because everyone called them out for trying to ride the Chick-fil-A wings, but I think everyone makes something like that. I know KFC makes their own version of the sandwich, the chicken brined chicken sandwich. I think you might be right. I think it's people that don't want to cook or they don't know how to cook, and so they have to pay for the privilege for a chicken sandwich that they could easily make themselves. What's our lazy, scared society going to do when they get what they want, and it is like people shooting neighbors and they can't go get their Chick-fil-A?
I think what I feel we've done is gone down the path of quantity over quality, and I feel as if people are finally tiring of quantity over quality because it's not good. Except for people in Texas. People in Texas don't care, apparently.
I've had some really good barbecue in Texas, and they care about barbecue at least. I know that much.
That's about it.
Yeah.
It's the only thing they really care about.
Yeah, because they don't even care about big hats anymore. No, I'm serious. Like the last time I looked at politicians in Texas, none of them were wearing big hats. Gone are the days of the 10-gallon, I don't even know what to call those things, cowboy hat. I had a cowboy hat one summer. It was made of straw and wires, and it was great. It was like the most sunshade providing head covering that I've ever had, and I wore the crap out of it. I wore that thing till it started falling apart. And it was cheap. It was only like $12. Watch out, world. I'm gonna go find another straw cowboy hat soon. I'm still kind of blown away by Dan Crenshaw getting called a traitor. They want to. Wait, where did I just see this? Dan Crenshaw is a traitor. He needs to be hung for treason. Like that's fucking scathing. Holy crap!
Yeah, man. Well, because then, that's what it was too. Oh my god, I forgot about this. Is the best part. So once the fucking Proud Boys or whatever, whoever the fuck it was trying to riot at the Pride Festival, once they were arrested, all those racists started turning on the cops and were like anti-blue light, like blue lives don't matter and all this shit. It's like immediately.
That's right. They're getting death threats.
And they were like, yeah, they started making death threats to the cops and shit.
That's right. They're getting calls from like all over the country. I read about that. I forgot about that. Yes. They're getting calls from everywhere. You know what's crazy is that a significant portion of them, the people who were arrested, were bailed out by third parties. And I think like something like 6 of them, specifically 6 from Idaho, were all bailed out by one person. 6 people. That's not cheap.
No.
From another state too, man. So these people are clearly funded. They've got funding. It's not like they're just some, backwoods redneck good old boys getting together to go, protect the oath or whatever, keep the oath or whatever, some shit. They are like funded by people who have interest in terrorism, in domestic terrorism. That's like, at some point, the media's got to come out of their fucking shell and say domestic terrorists were involved in some kind of tiny army gathering and got arrested outside of wherever, Oregon, or Washington. They've got to actually come out and say this shit, because if they don't, then we can't actually start pointing our attention to the people who are paying for this shit. And this is America, where we can track literally every transaction that exists anywhere in America. We're not fucking doing that to these people. But we do that to people in other countries who commit terrorist acts in other countries. Well, we need to... This is like a very basic plea to the cyber security industry. Do something about domestic terrorists. Find their money and fuck them up, please. Because these motherfuckers want to make life horrible for everyone. That's all.
Yeah, the fact I think that I don't know if it's too late, but they let the domestic terrorism go on for too long without calling it such. That now it's just what white kids do on the internet. They just terrorize people of color as a pastime. And women, and then they get to be like, "Oh, I was just a fucking kid. I was a stupid kid on the internet. That's what kids do." Because everything is basically set up to make life hell for everybody else but them. Which is this is why it's so egregious to the idea that Silicon Valley is like liberal at all. Because then you realize there was about a 6-month period where Elon was talking about UBI and he's Comrade Musk and all this shit just to like fuck Grimes, and then now he's like, I'm a Republican. Like, nobody changes their mind on shit that quick unless they were always actually a Republican. He was like, what's his name, Dennis
Rodman or Leary?
No, from Always Sunny.
Oh.
Pretending to be left wing just to fuck girls. There was like a whole episode where he's like going
that's like a thing. That's a fucking thing that's been going on since the dawn of political activism. Some dude who just wants to bang the hippie chick, so he goes and hangs out with the radicals or the hippies.
Right, but Elon Musk literally just did it. Clearly, because again, it's like the time he was posting on Twitter about UBI when he was with Grimes, and then the time he switched to Republican is like the kid's not even talking yet.
Oh, Kyle?
He's already Republican.
Wait, are you talking about his kid Kyle, or are you talking about...
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the newest kid.
Yeah,
because
that's how you pronounce that horrible combination of
he's got
characters.
5 other kids that nobody talks about because he's a terrible father.
Yeah, but that's because none of them have outrageous names that you have to pronounce, like Kyle.
Yeah, because he's like, he only did this one to pretend he was, this eccentric person when all those other kids have normal ass fucking names.
You know what's funny is that like eccentric people don't have to pretend to be eccentric. Eccentric people just are eccentric. And so the idea that he's like, oh yeah, that just makes him even more like greasy and smarmy and just less likable. I'm not even sure that's possible.
You mean like how his monologue on SNL was about how he's got autism but he's never been tested?
Okay, that's fucked up.
Yeah, it's super fucked up.
That's really fucked
up. His whole spiel is about how he's on the spectrum, and that's why he isn't going to probably be funny. And it's like, well, if you're gonna say that, then go get fucking tested. Otherwise, you can't make this into a bit and not be a greasy fuck, because that's all it was. It's just some greasy.
No, that's like people
grifter
who
bullshit.
like who make up some shit like they're without any. That's just people who won't eat like peanuts because they're allergic, but they're not.
But they've never actually gotten tested.
Yeah. Or people who claim some other kind of food allergy, but they've never been tested. They just know. What? I mean, I suppose if every time a person ate a peanut, they like experience anaphylaxis, like every single time, that's probably a pretty damn good indicator. You might not need to go get tested. Autistic people have it hard enough. Like, they don't need to be associated with Elon Musk if he's like just making shit up.
Meanwhile, Mark Cuban's out here making prescription drugs cheap by opening up a website for Americans to get access to generic drugs.
Go Mark Cuban. Holy crap.
Yeah, he's doing what
Billionaires
Elon Musk
should do.
thinks he's doing.
Billionaires should be doing shit
He
like
launched
this.
an online pharmacy specifically to combat prescription drug price gouging. That's the main mission. One prescription drug for leukemia that costs $9,657 per month costs $47 on Mark Cuban's website.
Holy crap. Go Mark Cuban, go.
Yeah.
Big ups to Mark Cuban for doing something like
And
for humanity or for
apparently
Americans at least.
they're not going to spend a nickel on marketing.
Do they need to?
They rely on word of mouth. So yeah, I feel like there is a shift in. Okay, because here's the thing about Mark Cuban. He like nobody is like a self-made anything. It's more so the things that he did to make the money that he made, he was much more involved in at the ground level than Elon ever was, which is why you would see him at the court side in the basketball games, or like he's
the owner who's on the fucking floor.
Right, one of the only ones ever who's also like enjoying the game, because it's also, you see all these people who own basketball teams or sports teams and they like don't necessarily even care about the sport and they're doing it to make money, but then you see Mark Cuban actually enjoying the games.
There's like some kind of anecdotal story about him like saving someone's career or something, like writing them some big check. I can't remember who it is.
Are you talking about Delonte West? Because Delonte West was like, he was houseless,
Yeah, no, that's who it is.
And then like Mark Cuban went and drove around and fucking found him.
Yeah.
And then put him in a rehab center. He literally drove around fucking, I think it's Houston or Dallas or some shit, looking for him, just driving around.
Yeah.
And eventually found him.
Yeah. No, that's the guy. That's absolutely the guy that I remember reading about. Like, that's some crazy like dedication.
Yeah, it's like I'm not saying this dude's perfect by any means, but it's like you can never. There's no way Elon Musk is finding anybody who worked for him in the past who eventually became houseless, and he's going and finding them and putting them in rehab and helping them get back on their feet.
Yeah.
No fucking way.
No, he's firing people for signing a letter.
And I mean, Mark Cuban went to IU. Dude just shows up in Bloomington all the fucking time unannounced and just goes to like Irish Lion or some shit and just like goes and hangs out.
Sometimes he goes to Nick's, apparently. I've seen pictures of him in Nick's. I've seen pictures of him at Village Deli with people.
He goes all around Bloomington.
Yeah, because he went to IU.
He can.
Yeah.
But just because people can doesn't mean they do, but he does, and that's a huge difference. Where like, um, if he had never just come and hung out at Nick's and just sat there and had a drink, we wouldn't be able to say shit like that. Like he just comes and fucking sits at the bar and watches a basketball game and not trying to like draw attention to himself because he'll be like wearing a hat or some shit. And he's like, you know, not the most recognizable person, but he's not like making a scene of himself to be like, oh, I'm coming back to my roots, or you know, it's like you wouldn't know he's in town unless somebody who knows what he looks like recognized him. Otherwise, he'd just be another unassuming person.
I mean, most people probably wouldn't recognize him.
But yeah, most people probably wouldn't, which is, you know, the only reason I would recognize him is because he went to IU and I went to IU, and he's like famous alum. So even then, there's like other people who went here like a lot of people who went to IU would more quickly recognize a basketball player that never even made it to the NBA than Mark Cuban. But that's not for better or for worse, but that's just to say he's not. Well, he's not like making his visage the center of attention. He's like not clout chasing. Like when he did that shit for Delonte West, he wasn't like, and then I went and saved this guy who fucking was in the gutter. Pat me on the back, man. It was like the only reason people even found out about that shit is because they saw him doing it. Like he didn't announce it. Other people saw him do it and then were like, this is what Mark Cuban did.
Yeah, because all of the video coverage, it's all the same. Like the Young Turks or TMZ or TMZ Sports or any of these, they all have the same footage of him and Delonte West. So I'm actually curious what actual human being got that video randomly on the street when it happened and saw it and recognized what was happening. Because, you know, shaky phone footage doesn't look like a professional camera.
No.
That's crazy. To think that there are rich people who just do stuff.
Well, and I feel, you know, I don't know the dude personally at all. It's more
I think that our society wants to celebrate things when they can, and it's hard to celebrate everything. It's hard to keep up with everything. There's too much shit going on.
Well, it's more so like Mark Cuban, I'm starting to get the sense that he's hit this point where he's like, okay, I've made enough money. What can I actually do to like leave an impact on the world that's not vaporware? That's what it seems like. And that's where, again, I don't know the dude personally. But I definitely do not get that feeling about Elon where he talks about doing that shit way too much, but all of the things that he does are just vaporware versions of his talk. And you don't hear Mark Cuban talking about it, and he's just doing it. Where, you know, the notion of like, don't talk about it, be about it. Well, this is 100% applying right now because
he walks the walk.
All I'm hearing is Elon talking about he needs to save humanity and humanity's gonna, you know, die off if we don't colonize Mars and all this bullshit where, I think it's if you're into sci-fi, the stuff that Elon says sounds cool until you just research it for like a fucking second.
He's gonna go to Mars, and they're gonna be able to make batteries out of iron and I don't know what else, iron and something else. But the big boon is gonna be the methane they're gonna extract from the surface. Because apparently there are these giant methane deposits that they found Like the latest or one of the rovers, it was detecting methane at the ground level that wasn't being detected in the atmosphere because it was getting dispersed too quickly. But they believe that there are rich methane deposits on Mars now. So he's going to get up there, and they're going to open up a fossil fuel mining operation on Mars. That's actually kind of sad.
When you say it out loud, it sounds so dumb.
When I say it out loud, it makes me laugh more than I should. It's like, it's so absurd.
Oh my god!
If we're going to spend the money to set up a mining operation on a object in the solar system, there are some planets that are, or moons that are literally oceans of liquid methane. It would be just as easy to get that stuff, I think. Or one would think or assume. Maybe I'm really just wrong, and there's no way to bring that stuff back from that far out. Like, the whole idea of sending a container from Jupiter all the way back to the Earth is like, yeah, that's not going to happen. We can't get it back there. Jupiter's gravity pulls it back out. Sorry, that was $10 billion down the drain. But we've got a can of gas waiting for you if you ever need it.
All that space mining sounded like such a good idea in 2011, and none of it is manifesting because it was never a good idea.
I mean, if they could strap a rocket onto one of those giant chunks of gold and bring it back, I think they would have started planning that. I don't think they can. I don't think that's possible at this point. I think that
No.
they need some giant, massive object with like the gravity of a planet to bring that thing in. And I don't think it's going to happen.
I mean, any of the methods of mining asteroids were never feasible. And that's the way that it was presented by investors as a means of just collecting money for vaporware. Like, that was like, they inflated the price of a company, and then they got all these investments and then never delivered. But all the other people who invested the first wave of investors got their money back, and then the company just fades into the background, and we act like nobody was ever promising flying cars or some shit. Like, well, Moeller, for example.
I think if one of the intellectual properties that they own ends up being developed into an actual space mining venture, then all of those investors who didn't get paid back might theoretically get some payback. Probably not, though. That's me being extremely wishful thinking, projecting into that kind of scenario. I don't think we're going to get anything interesting until there's like a next generation energy generation or next generation propulsion, something that makes it feasible to get to Mars and back quickly, makes it like a trip to the moon like nothing. Like, we need that. Without that, I don't think we're going to have the opportunity to enjoy space in any way other than through robots, which is fine. Space is fucking hostile. And it's probably a good thing that there are all these failures in the Starliner launch system and in the SLS launch system and in all these other launch systems that are having problems. It's probably a good thing that they're experiencing all these issues so that we don't send up a bunch of people to die. I actually much prefer that they cancel launches, or that in testing something fails and they shut it all down so there's no explosion, than read about the whole program coming apart because they rushed to launch. I don't care if it takes.
I'm looking at the Moeller history, They've had $100 million worth of investment and still have not produced one vehicle that can fly without a tether. And the reason they need a tether is to make sure it doesn't fucking fly out of control. So this is like, now they're being accused of deliberate fraud. This is like something that went for 30 fucking years. I remember the Moeller flying car as being on the news when in the 90s when I was a kid, because I'm like, oh, they're gonna have flying cars soon, because that's what they were saying. And this shit they never were able to deliver on that model, even with the $100 million.
Man, that thing looked so cool too.
It did.
It
Looked
so
really cool.
I was trying to remember like which one it was. And yeah, it looks so good. It looks like it's straight out of like, what was that anime they did live action of recently, with Harold, Spike. God, I can't remember the name.
Oh, Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, it looks like it's straight out of Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, it really did. But apparently that's because it was fictional. So,
well,
yeah. Might as well have been right out of Cowboy Bebop.
Accused of deliberate fraud.
Man.
You know, this is like 100% why we don't have nice things, is because people just make shit up and steal a bunch of money, and then nobody wants to invest in it in the future because everyone's, once bitten, twice shy.
Yeah, because that's where I'm just like looking at America and the promises of the future that were around in the 90s and what we have now. It's so incongruous with what they were claiming was coming about. And the trajectory was clearly built on a bunch of lies in a way that were like, oh, we got color changing shirts. We're going to have flying cars soon. And people just bought into the bullshit. Like, oh, I went from CD to mini CD. Oh, they're definitely going to make flying cars soon. Like, the trajectories just they were not adding up with what they were promising and what they were delivering. Like, we went from like Laserdisc to DVD to MP4, and it just is like, that's not a quick enough trajectory.
So, like a decade or a little bit over a decade ago, I was made aware, 2009, I was made aware of this three-wheeled car by a company called Elio Motors, and they tried to bring it to market, and they've been trying to bring it to market, and as far as I know, they've never actually produced anything. They keep taking reservations. Oh, they stopped taking reservations in 2013 apparently, and then now they're marketing an electric vehicle. They were going to try and sell a car, a three-wheeled vehicle, for $7,400, $8,000, and now they want to make an electric vehicle, and they're going to charge $15,000 for it. So here's another example of something that never gets made, that people are constantly like paying, buying doing the pre-order or trying to buy into, and they just don't exist. These kinds of things are just ongoing, like never ending.
This is where I'm like, it sounds like this vehicle, you look at it and you're like, oh yeah, they can make this. And the model looks like something any actual car company could do, but then these people did not realize what it takes to become a car company. And going from like zero to full-on manufacturing cars at scale is a century-long process that it took Ford a century to get to, and it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in 10 years.
This is in the marketing. Pep Boys is the anticipated official service provider. I mean, good for them because they've secured a service or someone to service their vehicle eventually in the future. Pep Boys, meanwhile, is like, yeah, we're getting advertising. We don't have to do anything.
They were promising 84 miles per gallon. It's $7,450 per vehicle.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like a great idea if they could bring it to market, but they can't. And they've been trying to bring it to market for over a decade. 13 years. Wow.
They said they've raised 60 million so far, but they say they need 200 million to make it real. This is last updated in January, as far as I can tell, and that's like they're still 140 million dollars away from bringing it to market.
Man, if only they'd have gotten in on the Dogecoin thing when Elon was
Oh my god. Wow.
I mean, if something like this was viable, I mean, Elon would have bought it already.
Man. Well, I'm interested to see, because I think the government, well, that's what it is in Europe. There's a mandate that all car producers have to be electric by, I think it's 2035.
Yeah.
Or either 2030 or 2035, regardless. But American car producers are going to have to adhere to those standards if they want to sell in Europe, which is why I think they're starting to shift already.
Yeah. Well, I read recently that not GM. No, all of the American companies. So GM is the first one to run out of federal subsidies for purchase of their vehicles. But Ford is like hot on their tails, and so is Stellantis. And so they're requesting that the cap be limited or be raised to allow more subsidies for purchase of electric vehicles. So that like GM can sell an additional 100,000 and get, whatever, $7,500 federal subsidy to the purchaser. And Ford wants another 100,000. They all want another. I don't know if that's the actual one, but they want more, obviously, because they need to be able to help. They need to recoup their investment in retooling their manufacturing process for electric vehicles. And I get it. They want taxpayers to pay for their factory, and then pay again when they might buy their vehicle. Maybe. and that's if they have sufficient credit to buy a $40,000 car.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, it's hard to know if the conditions of the planet will be habitable that long, but I do feel as if the car companies shifting towards electric sooner makes it more likely that we'll make it.
Yeah.
I'm young enough and do like sauna enough where if we started to get to 140-degree summers and shit, I think I'd be able to survive. But I don't,
Well, maybe if it's the humidity is sufficiently low, but once we get into the whole wet bulb territory, even like 90-degree weather can be dangerous.
Oh yeah. Oh,
so
definitely.
It'll be tough. Like the projections that I've read for the next what is it? We're 2022. The next 50 years, like by like 2070, even the South Coast is gonna be uninhabitable. It'll be too hot and too humid, and with average temperatures above like 96 degrees, that's just insane to me. And then, of course, it's just being downplayed like it doesn't matter. Like last week or earlier this week when it was, in the 90s or whatever, we had like 70 to 80% humidity. That put us in the danger zone for heat index. for hydrometer temperature measurement. Like that's like, you know, 10 minutes exposure, and then then an individual would risk heat stroke or heat exhaustion. I think it's the other way around. Heat exhaustion, then heat stroke. But still, like 10 minutes. That's not a long time.
No.
I don't think there was enough emphasis in the media about how dangerous that heat wave really was, especially because of the humidity. Because we'd just been getting like, you know, weeks of rain. We had like, Sheila was gone for 17 days, and I think it didn't rain for 4 days that she was gone.
Mm.
You know, that's pretty intense. It's almost 2 weeks of rain, and then we get a heat wave for like a week. And all it did was, I mean, I guess it dried it out a little bit. It just pushed all that water back up into the atmosphere or into the air around us. Last year, when there was that heat wave in the Pacific Northwest, the wet bulb temperature was something low, like 71 degrees, and they had temperatures in the 90s and hundreds at some points, I think. And that's like kill you fast weather.
Yeah, weather is no joke, man. This shit is like, whether it's cold or hot. So many people like are at risk of when the electric grids fail and they don't have their climate control. It's like, you know, it's real. It can happen so fast, and that's where I'm like, personally, I don't feel as at risk for it, but I'm more and more aware of people who are at risk of like climate control due to electric grid failure in extreme weather conditions. And it's like, it's even more reason to go to more microgrids.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing enough quick moves towards microgrids for my taste. Because I also feel like they're more sustainable.
You know, it's interesting. Like a lot of power companies are trying to figure out ways to pay less for the electricity returned to the grid by solar panel owner operators. And this is happening all over the country. And it's really kind of insidious because they've always said, like, oh, yeah, if you produce a net positive, we'll pay for the electricity. We'll buy it back from you, and blah-de-da. And instead of investing more money in their own solar fields, they're just maintaining the existing grid, which is deteriorating. There have been numerous brownouts and blackouts and earlier I mentioned something about water. I think I mentioned water shortages. Anyways, when the power goes out and the water pumps don't pump water, and that water sits around in those pipes for a while, I think the first thing that starts appearing is this bacteria that causes Legionnaire's disease, which is why they're like that. That's why municipalities issues boil orders or boil advice or advisory, and gotta run your water till it starts looking clear and no more bubbles, and then you gotta boil it for 24 hours if you're gonna use water, that kind of stuff. Like the electricity doesn't have to go down for very long.
No, it don't take long at all.
Yeah, and it's not like a ruptured mains where they can close it off or isolate it, and then water pressure can be restored, and then they still have a boil order. This is like everywhere that water pump station supports, all of those places are now susceptible. That's a big deal. Like entire cities, or maybe counties. I don't know how that works. I know that we've got several water facilities in Bloomington, but I don't think we've had like a full citywide power outage in a long time. Like where the entire...
I think we're on two grids because I know whenever um, power goes out, it's usually south of us. Like I think we're on a separate grid altogether than everybody south of 10th Street.
Yeah. And then there's some degree of like interconnectivity where if a portion of the grid goes down, they can isolate that transformer or substation and then restore power to the rest of the grid. They just need to know what's going on so they can bring it all back online in the right order so they don't blow up more stuff. And that makes sense. You got to power cycle your devices intelligently. You can't just turn everything back on. That could cause too much strain on the power grid, which we're already doing.
Yeah. Well, and that's where I think Texas and Florida usually are the states that get hit the hardest every year. But California usually gets pretty hard too.
Yeah. Well, they've had, for the last in the last couple of weeks, I think I've read that they've had more like positive solar and wind generating days than they've had like ever. It's been like a record for the amount of renewable energy that they're generating. But then the problem is they don't have enough storage. and even worse, there's this thing called the duck curve apparently that describes how people use electricity versus like the time on like a timeline, and that it compares that to during the times of day when energy is being produced most effectively or at highest rates. And it turns out that when energy is being produced, like peak energy production is available, that's when the demand for electricity is at its lowest. And then when demand is highest, that's when production is at its lowest. And so full-time like solar is impossible without extensive storage networks. And those have to be distributed because they can't just, if we had one centralized battery, people who at the fringes of that grid would be the least well served, and people closest would have the best power. So it has to be distributed. We have to have microgrids. The sooner that happens, the faster everything is recouped. You know, it's unfortunate that it has to be, it's always within the framework of like some company is going to lose some money or they're going to spend a lot of money, or that the taxpayer is going to have to spend a lot of money. But it's like, this money has to get spent eventually because these things have to be upgraded eventually. And if they don't, then we're going to be hurting a lot worse than if we'd have been proactive about it. But
Right.
there's always the portion of the population that says, don't fuck with my money, I already pay taxes. And it's like, yeah, we need to spend the money though on things that aren't going to like, you know, blow up a building in another country.
Feels so weird not to be able to convince people to stop spending money on one to spend money on the other. Because then it's like, why are they so? What in the toxoplasmosis is making people so obsessed with guns and killing and government-supported murder? What is driving that? And
It's got to be fear, like irrational fear.
mm-hmm. But I mean, you know, that irrational fear is like, well, is that where they're just placing their fear of the inevitable end of their life towards? Because if that's the case, then they need to grow the fuck up and stop making everybody else deal with their shit. Because a bunch of us have to deal with the same uncertainty, but we're not fucking making everybody else miserable.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm like, are Americans just incapable of not living in uncertainty without making other people miserable? And that's where I'm like, if that's the case, then fuck these people.
Yeah. I don't know. There's part of me that doesn't want to find out what happens if we just ignore them, because there's potential for things to get really a lot worse if we just let them do whatever the fuck they want. But at the same time, it's exhausting to try and all my life in school, at some point somebody asked me for the answer for something, because they didn't want to go find it themselves, or they didn't know how to find the answer. And I don't mind answering questions, but when people who definitely need to be asking questions stop asking questions, that's when it's like kind of anxiety inducing. I have friends who have kids, and they say they only really start worrying about their kids when they hear silence, or they used to. I mean, now some of their kids are older now, but that's always stuck with me. It's like when little kids are playing and you can hear them, that means everything's fine. But so I don't know where I'm going with this. I want to let them do whatever the fuck they want. Sure, let them go blow themselves up, but don't blow up stuff that we still want to enjoy. Fuck, that doesn't even work. Because they want to blow up things that we want to enjoy.
I want to enjoy Dan Crenshaw, so
Yeah, that's true.
they can go after Dan Crenshaw.
Yeah, but then that just causes the government to spend money on an investigation and court. Like I can't believe I'm arguing this. It would cost less to allow him to stay alive than to let these wackadoodle nut job homosexuals kill him.
I mean, but are they even capable of doing anything?
Probably not.
As far as I can tell, like, they weren't able to stop him from getting harassed, so
Maybe
they can't stop harassment. They ain't stopping anything else.
Yeah. Can't stop harassment. We can't stop anything else. We just want to know what's going on, basically, right? So if horrible shit happens, then we can point the lights and camera to it and monetize. That's like the new American way. I mean, TMZ and a lot of these media companies, they don't even generate their own footage. They just scrape from the internet and pay somebody who posted it to YouTube or Instagram or whatever platform, TikTok.
I'm sure Dan Crenshaw had the feeling of being secure until he realized, like, oh shit, these motherfuckers can get all in my space, and there ain't shit somebody can do about it. I'm sure he had a little wake up call, because I think a lot of people think things apply to other people and not to them, and then when shit starts to apply to them, then it's like, oh fuck, I probably shouldn't have taken that position because now I'm threatened. And it takes that for a lot of people to shift their perspectives, unfortunately.
I don't think those people are ever going to experience that kind of inflection point or recognize that it's happening. That takes like a level of
I don't either.
self-awareness.
I don't either.
Yeah, that's like some self-awareness.
I don't have faith.
Yeah, that self-awareness and introspection that demand certain other abilities that I've often just been unable to identify within that group.
So, like, here's just another example. Like, let's bring it back to Ukraine. Like,
oh yeah, Ukraine is still happening.
Do you know what's happening? Do you even know what's happening? You know what I mean? Because it's like when it first started go down, it was like the only thing that anybody was reporting on, and now it's like I have to go searching. What's happening? Who's winning? Is Russia winning? Who's Ukraine defending? I don't know. What's the score? Like, and I'm not trying to make light of it. It's more so this is how they've presented it. It's people selling ads between reporting on shit about Ukraine is now why that they can't sell ads between it. Now they're reporting on something else. So
they say that it could last for
war is still
years.
happening.
That's the latest. This war could last for years.
Yeah, which again, it's like, what does that even mean? Is that just them constantly killing each other? Or is this Ukraine redrawing their borders? Like, what does that even, And I'm not trying to be obtuse, more so like the way that the media has presented. This feels like
I think it means that economic systems have stabilized.
I mean, but have they? They weren't stable before. That's what I'm saying. It's like
relatively.
This is what I'm saying. Like, we've been at perpetual war
for 40 plus years.
Right. So them saying this is going to last for years, what does that even like? Does this not connect to fucking 2014 Crimea when Crimea got invaded? So it's like it's already been going on for 8 years.
Yeah.
So like to restart it as if Crimea doesn't count, it's really weird to make it seem as if, oh, this is a new war that has nothing to do with Russia invading Crimea and moving weapons into Crimea, which used to be Ukrainian territory. This has nothing to do with that. This is completely different. A completely different war altogether. So this one's going to be the one that lasts for years, not the one that's already been going on for 8 years. That we've just been ignoring over here because it didn't get popular the first time.
Well, it got attention because they attacked Chernobyl. Right? I thought that was the
it got attention, right? Because they were making TikToks about little Ukrainian grandmas stealing Russian tanks, which was probably fucking made up anyway. So it's like it got popular because they were running propaganda about it to get Americans to get behind sending money to Ukraine, which they did immediately, and then turn it into this thing where we're sending billions of dollars to Ukraine in the form of weapons. While we still haven't solved the fucking problem of police killing people here. So it's like there was a quick little propaganda shit to get money.
We're spending more on Russian mental illness than we are on American mental health care.
Right. You go to Amazon, there's still a fucking donate to Ukraine thing on the tab.
Oh man, I haven't been to Amazon in like a week. I'm so put off by Amazon. I'm at the end of my Amazon journey.
I mean, but it's not just Amazon; it's still everywhere.
No, I know.
Anywhere you go on American internet, not on internet. I'm talking about American internet. This is an American internet. They're gonna ask you if you want to fucking donate to Ukraine. You go to Jersey Mike's. You go to fucking McDonald's. You go anywhere out. Go to cash register. They're gonna ask you if you want to fucking donate to Ukraine. So, it's like that's what I mean.
But I don't. Yeah.
The remnants of the Ukraine propaganda are still around, but we're just not getting bombarded with the news as much anymore. Because Americans have Ukrainian fatigue really quick.
I think the Ukraine Twitter sites are still kind of interesting, but I haven't really been following them either. It's kind of difficult to do that, without having a Twitter account. I think all the imagery looks the same. There's nothing really new to report except information. They can't show. I mean, how many skeletons of a building do we have to see before we know what the skeleton of a building looks like? I think that speaks to your comment about Ukraine fatigue. How many tanks do we need to see before we know what a tank looks like? How many soldiers do we need to see kneeling behind a bush before we know what a soldier kneeling behind the bush looks like? How much drone footage do we have to watch? It turns out that war is not actually that interesting. It actually kind of sucks. Like, not just for the people who are at ground zero, but for the people who are watching it. It's not actually interesting to watch. I think it reminds people that there are humans, and it makes them feel bad.
Right. And then in the process, if our way of life depends upon these things being part of it in a way that now, because it's come to a military boiling point, we can't ignore it. Why can't we change our way of life? It's absurd that we have framed it as if somehow Russia is this communist state and China's this communist state that also depend upon us being this quote unquote capitalist nation, which is really just a bunch of oligarchs hoarding the capital. And we have neo-feudalism that calls itself capitalism, in the process framing other forms of neo-feudalism as communism when it's all just neo-feudalism. And then they make it seem as if these things are necessary for us to keep this neo-feudalist system going. And it's like, well, why can't we accelerate the oil dependence, like disconnection? Like we know we need to get off oil dependence. We know our dependence on oil is why Russia has leverage in this current situation. Like, if we weren't so dependent on oil, if Europe wasn't so dependent on oil, Russia wouldn't have as much leverage as they do right now. Not forcing, countries still have to keep doing business with Russia, which is basically them funding the invasion of Ukraine because they have to keep this fucking oil. Why can't we? Like, it's insane that we can't do any, like, we're so beholden to these oil, fossil fuel processes in our ways of life that we can't just say, okay, let's shift to this so we don't have to contribute to this war. But we as citizens seem to be incapable of doing, like, because it's neo-feudalism, and it's all neo-feudalism. That's where I'm like, I'm of the mind that the experiment is to see if people will be convinced that neo-feudalism takes the form of whatever they're told. So it's like, oh, we'll tell them it's capitalism. We'll tell them that they're able to do all this other shit and earn their way up the ladder, when really it's still oligarchy. It's still a bunch of feudal lords in control of most of the capital, just letting enough people in on the plantation, like, main house, to make it seem like everybody's not still stuck in this vassal lord hierarchy. And that's where I'm like,
what really gets me is that last year, between January and December of 2021, Russian oil accounted for 7.9% of U.S. imports of crude oil. And that 7.9%, let's just say that it continued into right up to the moment that we stopped using Russian oil. That 7.9% was enough of a hit to cause fuel prices to just jump up to the highest they've ever been in the history of the United States.
yeah.
That 7.9% that's all it took to add an extra $1.50 to our gas.
Yep.
Serious, sometimes $2 or more. I'm just talking about Indiana, where we've got real cheap gas. But like California, where they had, $10 gas, probably more. Like, fuck. How much oil is Russia supplying to the rest of the world? Because we get most of our gas from Canada, or our oil. 50% of our gas comes from Canada. It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, war has always been an excuse for a cash grab from from the capitalists.
Like, it's weird that there's a war happening in Ukraine, and our media would make you think that America just stopped imperialism. Like, we're not doing imperialist fucking operations right now somewhere. You know we are.
Well, obviously.
You know in your heart that we're doing some imperialism.
Oh no, this
right
is
now.
like this is the
But it's like
this is
the
the perfect
news
time
is like,
to do.
oh, Ukraine war.
This is the perfect time to do imperialist shit. I'm serious.
Exactly.
All
Oh,
eyes
for
on
sure.
Ukraine. Let's get extra
yeah.
imperialism. Like let's turn it up to 11 because now's the time. They won't even notice. We don't even know what's going on. So if we don't know, how can they know?
Yeah, as if the United States military just took a pause and is sitting on the sidelines watching, waiting for something to be called into action. Like, oh yeah, no, we're time out over here. You guys
Whoa,
are fighting.
man.
We're gonna take a time out.
What you just described is actually scarier. Tommy USA is in the schoolyard and he's watching Yuri Ukraine get his ass handed to him by Peter Russia, and he's not doing anything about it. And all the kids in the schoolyard are standing around fucking watching Ukraine get the crap socked out of them, and no one's doing anything. Oh, we'll give you some money. Here you go. Here's some money. Here's some guns. Oh well, Russia has guns too, so it doesn't really matter. You know, like they're still getting beat up. Their land is still being destroyed. Meanwhile, everyone's just casually watching. Oh, we'll sanction Russia. China says, we'll support you guys. We've got food. We've got energy. We'll sell you computer chips. Fucking China. All that economic power, and it really doesn't mean much. Because they're afraid to cut into their bottom line.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we're dealing with some absolute, like, no humanity people who are just, like, all for depopulating the earth any way, any means possible because they want to have more oxygen. Or because they think they'll get more oxygen that way.
I think they're the same group that thinks that wind power will suck up all the wind and they won't be able to have wind after that. I think it's the same group.
Yeah, but try to. These are the same people we can't explain the atmosphere to, or how the sun causes atmospheric convection.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to imagine like the kind of device that would be necessary to capture wind and convert all that energy and like absorb it like a giant sponge or something. The wind sponge farm producing 21 gigawatts per ounce of wind.
That's so much that the earth stops spinning.
Yeah, the earth will stop spinning because this sponge is so good at absorbing energy. This is how we end up in a black hole.
I think that was the same group that was trying to say a giant wind farm in China was making the earth spin slow down. Because there was definitely that meme bullshit floating around for a while. I remember seeing that one on Facebook.
I wonder how many sails we could put up. If it would even be possible to put up enough sails to slow the earth down. Could we even generate enough resistance? Would they have to be made out of like mylar? Would we have to erect like mountain-sized solar sails in the right direction? Or would the earth just keep spinning and just starts picking up more speed as the sails flipped directions and caught sun from the other side?
Yeah, that's what I think. it would offset, because again, it's like as you're saying, it's two sides. So one would not like it would only work if both sides got.
How are we supposed to deploy a mountain-sized solar sail in the few hours of twilight before sunrise, and then bring it back down in like a short amount of time after peak sun so that it doesn't start accelerating?
Plus, it would have to actually be like anchored to the core of the planet where 70% of the Earth is water. Then, if the core is also moving, there's nothing actually to anchor it to that won't move itself.
Giant, like hundreds mile deep pylons going into the Earth, getting superheated, by the mantle, releasing all that crazy ass, like whatever, all the hydrogen and oxygen that's trapped in the rock, creating even more atmosphere for the Earth. That's not going to slow us down. Just going to make it hotter. Man, maybe this is like the kind of stuff that I unintentionally am talking about when I say talk about people trying to undermine the climate control system. I mean, we've gone over numerous times the various ways that capitalism cannot solve capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe human activity can't actually solve human activity. Like the only way to counteract it is to stop doing this shit. Like we don't know why the fields are always on fire. Oh, little Johnny over there keeps setting fire to the fields. Oh, well, we can't do anything to stop it.
Yeah, it's like the oil companies and gun companies have taken control of all of our decision making somehow. I have no idea how it happened, but it's like all of our decisions are being made by gun and oil companies. Like everything.
God, what a shitty.
It doesn't matter what it has to do with. Like, schools, gun company. Infrastructure, oil company. Planes, oil company. Security, gun company. You can bring your gun on a plane as long as you store it away. Gun company.
If you join our organization, we'll make sure that your gun has a seat on the airplane next to you. You just have to buy 4 gallons, four barrels of oil. I'm actually surprised there isn't a bring your gun on the flight company. it would have like one flight, and that plane would have a bar on it, and then some calamity would ensue, and then rapid depressurization and explosion.
Still smoking cigarettes on that flight.
Oh man, it'd probably be
no
like
seatbelts.
It'd be like the 70s or the 80s or something.
Freedom flights.
Freedom flights. Smoke your. If you got them, light them, or smoke them if you got them. They could usurp that Doors song. Their slogan could be "Come on, baby, light my fire."
Baby's crying, just slap it. Anything goes on freedom flights.
With freedom flights, we're not sure if baby means a child or an adult woman.
Oh my god!
I get the impression that freedom flights is like the most misogynistic flight experience that exists, complete with like alligator skin boots and. I mean, does it really get any worse than that?
Every hostess is named Honey or Sweetie, so you don't have to learn actual names.
Exceptional Randos show is produced live in Sunroom Studios' Base Capsule and in partnership with KLST 103.5, RadioCallisti.org. Remember to catch our Exceptional Randos live stream on YouTube every Sunday between 2 and 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you have a story, idea, or question that you would like to share, we want to hear from you. Thanks for listening.